Now, if you're familiar with the Underworld movies at all, then I, Frankenstein will feel like familiar territory in some ways. The overall look of the film in terms of color palette, visual effects, and cinematography is very similar, as well as some of the same producers are on board, and there's also some familiar faces. Seriously, if you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I would probably advise spending your time doing something else. Now, just like Underworld, I went into this movie expecting nothing spectacular, and I thought maybe I could just enjoy it for monster fights. And I have to say, with this state of mind, I was able to enjoy the Underworld movies. I mean, they were nothing special, but I was able to enjoy them from a visual action standpoint. And I also enjoyed the whole vampires versus werewolves thing. Anyways, I never saw I, Frankenstein because I really had no incentive to, until I saw the terrible reception that it was getting from critics. So I decided to watch it to see if it really was that bad, because as all of you know, that's what this show is about. Now, I have to say that I, Frankenstein has some pretty awesome fight sequences and some pretty cool fight scenes, but these are pretty much the most interesting parts of the movie. The characters are dull and uninteresting, the plot is ridiculous, the writing is full of dialogue that throws exposition at you so much it's cringeworthy, and some of these lines are so bad they're unintentionally hilarious.
I've come to destroy you. And this place, the Gargoyle Order, must survive, and mankind with it.
Now, if you weren't already aware of the graphic novel or had seen some of the trailers, you might think a movie titled I, Frankenstein would be about some kind of experiment to bring Steve Jobs back to life that goes horribly wrong. I would probably watch that. The movie starts with the Frankenstein monster, otherwise known as Adam Frankenstein, telling the story about how Victor Frankenstein created him and then was so horrified by his creation that he decided to kill him. Now, I actually find this pretty hilarious because Frankenstein doesn't die. I mean, wow, Victor, you managed to create life, but you completely failed at destroying it? Think of how much time and effort this guy would have had to put into playing God in order to finally create life. But killing? Doesn't exactly require a PhD. I mean, it's actually hard for me to think of a species on Earth that hasn't figured that shit out, no matter how unintelligent they are. And you're a doctor. I think you could figure out a few ways to get the job done efficiently. At the very least, just stab him in the heart or cut him up into a bunch of pieces. The Mafia does it all the time. Ah! After all, you put them together piece by piece. Just take them apart again. Kids can do that. It's called Lego. So you throw him off a bridge and don't confirm the kill? You just walk away assuming everything has gone to plan? You're worse than a James Bond villain. Holy shit, we're less than a minute into this thing and already I'm getting carried away. The movie wastes no time getting into the action as Frankenstein is attacked by a bunch of demons while he's trying to bury Victor's body. Luckily, he's saved by a bunch of gargoyles who take him to their clubhouse and tell him all about how the Gargoyle Club was put together by John Travolta.
I understand Frankenstein never offered you a name. I should like to call you Adam.
No, let's just call him Frankenstein. It sounds cooler. I'm gonna call him Frankenstein for the remainder of this review.
My name is Adam.
Yep, don't care. Can I call you Frankenstein? I mean, the movie's not called I, Adam. So they take him into their weapons room and explain to him how the demons can only be killed by weapons bearing the Gargoyle Club symbol. Then they tell him not to choose those weapons because they're too blunt and heavy, and he's like, I'm fucking Frankenstein, bitch! Then he just leaves and goes to where no one will ever find him because he says, trusting others is a mistake you only make once. Well, you trusted the gargoyles enough to take their demon-slaying weapons. What if they don't work? Then you're stuck fighting demons all by yourself and all you got is a couple of sticks. Besides, why not hang around the clubhouse for a bit? Get to know everyone. I mean, she's pretty hot. Find out what her situation is. Maybe this guy is totally in the friend zone and she's available. Plus, you got the whole wounded, mysterious, brooding personality going on. Not to mention the scars. Chicks dig scars. Okay, well, maybe not that many. That's actually kind of gross. So I guess after about, I don't know, 200 years, Frankenstein just decides, screw it. I'm gonna go back into town to find more demons. Anyways, I guess somewhere along the way he got a haircut. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it helps him blend more into society, even though he's still got a face that looks like he tried to make out with a lawnmower. Then there's this big attack on the Gargoyle Club by a shit ton of demons, and they capture the Gargoyle Queen. But it's here where the writing really stands out. They slap you in the face with so much exposition it's not even funny. And what happens here? Can someone explain this to me? He brings him really close to the water to interrogate him, and then you'd think he's gonna kill him by putting his face into the water, which would make sense. But he doesn't. He just holds his face in the exact same spot and his head explodes? What? So anyways, to save the queen, they give the demons the, I don't know, Victor's journal, which is kind of like his Frankenstein instruction manual. I also have to mention that I think the editing is kind of funny here. I mean, we have this really intense music laid over this sequence of Frankenstein sneaking into the lab, which is then cut with shots of this guy organizing petri dishes and this chick pouring coffee. Then there's this fight between a demon and Frankenstein, and to be honest, the fight was kind of cool, but at the end of the fight, the demon pretty much has Frankenstein beat, and the scientist chick starts trying to negotiate with the demon. Really, in the past, hour or so, you've just found out that Frankenstein is real, and now you're staring at an actual demon? You're not at all hesitant or terrified. You're just gonna treat this demon as if it was a normal human being. I just think that if it was me in this situation, I would be calling 911. Not for the police, for an ambulance, for me, because the only explanation I could get out of this whole situation is that somebody must have dropped LSD in my coffee, and now I'm completely tripping balls. Thank God she finds this room complete with a bed, electricity, and the right medical supplies she needs to stitch him up. Wow, that was convenient to find in this old, empty, derelict building. And I have to say that Frankenstein is dealt quite the beating throughout this movie. I mean, at one point in the movie they explain that he's hard to kill because he's got a lot of electricity in his blood or something, but whatever. Frankenstein was constructed by various parts of corpses, so it would be easy to argue that he would suffer all of the shortcomings of human biology. I mean, he's not the Terminator or Wolverine. Bones break under a certain amount of pressure. That's just basic physics. This, for example, would probably break your hand at least, punching a giant stone gargoyle in the face that's flying at you at top speed. But whatever, I mean, it's a fantasy movie, and in the end, if you really enjoyed the Underworld movies, you might like this, but like I said before, you're better off just watching something else. And I have to say, I think one of the big problems with this movie is Frankenstein. I mean, it's pretty hard to actually care for our protagonist in this movie because we don't really have much of a reason to. He's not really that likable, and it's pretty hard to find anything about the character to connect to. Pissed off because you were created in a lab by a mad scientist who then tried to kill you. Yeah, man, I know that feeling. Brooding over all the demons who have been hunting you for the past 200 years? Hey, we've all been there. But I have to say that I do like Aaron Eckhart as an actor. I mean, he's been in some of my favorite movies like Thank You for Smoking or The Dark Knight, but in this movie, he doesn't really come across as Frankenstein. He just comes across as a pissed off Aaron Eckhart with some crap on his face. Speaking of gargoyles, I can't help but think how awesome it would have been if they would have, taken the money that they made this movie with and made Gargoyles movie. That would have been cool, but that's all. I'm only saying that because I grew up in the 90s and I loved Gargoyles. Thumbs up if you remember Gargoyles.